Ladies, many thanks for your time this morning. Xolisa, I just want to start with you about the importance of creating such a series.
Yes, good morning. Well, the series is important, number one, in that intermediate phase children in our schools do not have enough books written for them and for their age group. Secondly, in our history books, we don't get to see history of women told, in the history books. So for us, it was important to start the children very early to see that their lives that they have today have been shaped by their grandmothers in history that they need to know about. Thirdly, it was also important to prepare these books for the children because like I said, for language and literacy learning, it is important for children to have something to read. And for us, reading is not just the combination of words and of letters. It is something, children have to read something. It has to have some knowledge, rich knowledge that is there. So the history of our South African women was an important historical knowledge that we thought that the children need to learn, and in the different languages.
No, absolutely, Atambile, that's very crucial because so often the role that women play within the lives of people, their families, children and the like is very underestimated, and that story is never told loud enough. Oh, Atambile, I think you are muted. There we go. There you are.
No.
Please continue.
Great. Hi. Thanks for having us. So a few years ago, there was a commission on the ways in which history is taught in South Africa. And the focus at that point was, where does history begin? Because do you begin with the colonial moment of 1652, or do you go further back, given that we've got the cradle of humankind? But often what is left out in those conversations is where women are situated in those stories. So either they appear as peripheral characters or they don't appear at all. And so what we were trying to do in our book is to show that people were peers, people knew each other, people were working in organizations, people were friends, and that a lot of the work that women do emerged from their friendships and their networks. So it was important for us to show those overlaps in the ways in which, and challenge the way in which history is taught, and challenge the ways in which women are fitted in. So it's like the people often make the joke, it's add women and stir. So you just add a few women, sprinkle a few women in, and you fix the curriculum. But actually it's more than that. And so that's what we were trying to not correct as such, but address. And it's something that we hope is going to be a long-term series. So while we've started off with these 3 books, we're hoping to include more books into the series.
Atambile, I just want to stay with you a second longer and maybe just give us a sense of how difficult it was to find and gather the information so that you could tell a wholesome, rich story within the series.
Yeah, I mean, it's incredibly challenging. The benefit, or I'd rather say the way that it happened, at least for me, was that it was while I was doing my PhD and I would constantly be bumping into these women. And so because I was in this very intensive program of looking for stories and writings by Black women, I found all these other Black women that I couldn't necessarily include in my thesis and in other forms of research. So I thought, well, let me park this. This is information that's going to become useful at a later stage. And slowly I've been writing about them. And when Xoli and I were chatting about this book over a couple of years, even the way that we chose our list was very challenging because there's always this challenge of where do you begin? The challenge with lists, if you say you've got 30 women, people are constantly going to ask you, well, where's so-and-so? Why didn't you include these women? And that's also part of the challenge, the choices that we had to make in terms of who we include. And as I say, this is a long work in progress. So if people don't see certain people in there, they can write to us and tell us, this is where you can find information. One of the groups that we really struggled with were Indigenous women and formerly enslaved women in South Africa. And that's a project that we really want to pick up on at a later stage to think of ways of incorporating them. So we made the decision of starting in the 1800s rather than before that. And that's something that we can circle back to or go back to at another point so that we have enough information. So, for example, when I was doing the research, I was using old newspapers like the Bantu World, Umtheteli wa Bantu. I was using old historical books that are out of print. So the other challenge is kind of drawing together all these texts, different kinds of texts, and then putting them together into a story or a narrative, and then putting them in a way that's going to be accessible for children was incredibly challenging but rewarding as well.
No, absolutely. One can only imagine. Xolisa, talk us through the literary journey of putting the words within the book, the tone that you guys decided to settle on in the manner that you are telling these stories. Talk us through that.
Oh, well, it was such a difficult one because we wanted to create nonfiction, and often nonfiction, it often reads a little bit different from fiction, because fiction, will start with long ago, there was this, there was an elephant or something, and these ones are like nonfiction. You have to tell the facts, but you have to tell the facts in a way that is interesting to children. So it was important for us not to just include words in the book, but also includes images that would attract children's interest. It reminded us, writing this, it reminded us of how when we were young and reading magazines, for example, we would open and look at the pictures and sometimes claim that this is my house, this is my, this is my house, and these are my clothes, this is my food, and would pretend eating. So it is so important in writing children's books, even if they are in the intermediate phase, to have images in them, because images are as important as the words. And so for us, having that combination was very, very important. And then also the tone, getting the tone right. It's easy for us as now academics to write in a higher language or deeper vocabularies. And we had to make sure that we define the words or extend the meaning of what we were explaining to children, and sometimes explain what colonialism is. At some point, we had decided that we were going to have a glossary of terms where we have a term in English and then define, or in isiXhosa defined. But then we decided later on against the glossaries because of space that we needed to have in the book. So we ended up defining the terms inside the text itself. So we would sometimes some of the words that come from isiZulu, like imbokodo, having to understand what that means and explain it, or ukuthomba, what that means and explain it. And so it was important for us to make sure that the children understand what we are trying to read, because some children will be reading the books themselves. And so that is important. The other important thing is that we are hoping that for grade 4 and 5 children, parents will read to them and with them the books and discuss the vocabularies that come up, if they are a little bit heavier. But for grades 6, 7, and 8, and 9, children, they can try to read by themselves and also look up the meanings of the words.
How difficult was it to decide on the title of the book, Xolisa? Did you both have a debate about that?
The titles were not that difficult, but I think we started off with different titles in mind. So we had this book, The 10 Extraordinary Leaders, Activists and Pioneers. So we had already in our Google Drive created different folders, and we said one will be on history and politics, and another folder was going to be on culture, literature, and art, and the other one was going to be on education, maths, and science. And so then, but we didn't want to have those as titles as if the books are textbooks. So then we had to come up with really catchy titles, and so it was a bit of a discussion then in getting the catchy titles, work for the children. So you can also ask Atambile about this, because
absolutely,
it was.
Atambile, maybe you can just weigh in on the titling process, but as a final thought from you, what is it that you want children to take away from this book?
Yeah, the title kind of came through the many conversations we had, but settling on the name of the series, Imbokodo, was also to historicize Watinda Bafazi, Watinda Imbokodo, which we associate with 1956, but we want, because the story started in the 1800s, we wanted to show it in relation to stories that had come before the 1950s. And what do we want children to take out of it? I think I'd like kids to, and parents as well, to have conversations about their own family stories. You know, I'm imagining children sitting with their grandmothers. So we did a deliberate decision of not calling the woman by their name, and we call them mum, so like Mambusi or Mamwini. So to kind of give them that reverence as though children are talking about their grandmothers. So we want people to be interested and curious about the stories of their grandmothers, but also to question why some of these women don't appear in their school history textbooks. So we want kids and teachers to have a conversation about this. Hopefully it can be integrated into the curriculum and really enrich the ways in which we teach history, not only at home, but also at school.
Ladies, thank you very much for your time this morning. Atambile Masola, historian and poet, and of course Xolisa Guzula, who is an early literary specialist and children's author. Thank you very much for your time this morning.